but they did seem and do seem to me still completely original. And I think what, the remarkable thing Bill has done, we're so used to taking photography for granted. We've all been born into this world where there's photography, and we don't think about it very much. I mean, Keith Carter does, and people who are serious about photographs and people who are serious about looking at them. But for most of us, we have our little Canon ELPH, and we take snapshots, and we assume that what we take a picture of will show up on the screen or in the film. And what I think Bill has done is both in a real sense, in terms of the actual cameras he uses, and in a kind of a metaphorical sense, he has taken us back to the roots of photography. He has stripped away all the technology, all the bells and whistles, all the things that we're used to taking for granted, so that what he has, ultimately, what he's using is really almost not an instrument at all. It's just this little thing with a little tiny hole in it and a piece of photographic paper that enables an image to be captured there. So in a way, I think why we react so strongly to these photographs, why they seem both so familiar and so strange to us, is that we're seeing them not through somebody's aperture, but through somebody's eye. They are registering on our minds in the same way they kind of registered in the camera. And I think it's a daring thing to do, to sort of divest yourself of all that technology, and in a way to kind of travel back in time to use the technology, use almost more primitive technology than the first photographs, in a way, to conjure up this world that is sort of there but unseen. The ghostly forms and the ambivalent gestures and the haunted images in the background, those are not just. I mean, in one sense, those are, of course, just things the camera happened to pick up. But in the other sense, they're things that were there that we could not see, but that by virtue of Bill and these cameras are now there's a permanent record of. So I am a big fan of these pictures from the very first moment I saw them. It seemed to me that Bill has created this way of seeing the world in a way that nobody has thought about doing in a long time. So back to you, Bill.
Perhaps some of you have some nice things to say. No, it is a kind of mystical journey, because the human eye simply does not see what the film sees. I mean, we were talking about that earlier. I mean, it's the accumulation of time on a piece of film. In fact, I think really what goes on for me is that it's not really so much an image that's being collected at all, but a body of time. Those pictures, most of them are probably, a half a second to 10 or 12 seconds. And that sounds very quick. Everybody just listen. Everybody just be real quiet, and I'm going to go 10 seconds. And this is how long 10 seconds is. Now, the world moves an enormous distance in that length of time. That was 10 seconds by my count. That was in Mississippi. But my eye cannot accumulate that time, but that film can. And then through the process of developing the film and printing the film and so on, then there is a physical record. I mean, it is now manifest in the world. And when you do a portrait of somebody, 10 seconds, it is a totally different kind of portrait than if you do it in 1/100th of a second, say, because it invites a participation with a subject that simply doesn't exist when you just click. I mean, it's totally different. I mean, it is all of a sudden, it is a dialogue with the film. And I find it utterly fascinating about this process. So, do you have questions you'd like to ask about these things?
Mike does over there.
Hey, Mike.
Elizabeth was talking about the lack of control. And when you have the lack of control, you also have a frustration factor. How difficult is that to be managed?
You know, I started this so I would not have control. I mean, I wanted to get away from the whole intellectual process of thinking about it. I just wanted an instrument that you could go from a feeling to an exposure. You know, and see, these cameras, you don't even look through. I mean, you just hold them. And as I went on with it, I mean, I used to hold them like this, but then I'd hold them like this, and then I'd move them. And just because it's just play. It's just fun, you know. And J. Frank Dobie told me years and years and years ago that luck is being ready for the chance. And that's what Elizabeth and I were talking about, you know, that you just be ready for the chance. Take a chance. Now, these are not the only pictures I took. These are the ones that made it to the wall. You know, there are an enormous number, you know, that didn't make it anywhere. But I got to the point with these cameras that I could pretty much take an okay picture any time. But going from okay to something that you think, you know, that's pretty good. Keith has a much better record than I do. And so does James Evans, who I saw come in a minute ago, but he's not listening to what we're saying. He's talking to DJ. So that whole business of luck is being ready for the chance. I mean, that was the whole idea of doing this kind of photography, Mike. I mean, I didn't want to think about it. I just wanted an instrument where I didn't have to think. Because once you start thinking, then essentially you're controlling. You're saying, oh, you know, you're predetermining or pre-visualizing what the picture is going to be and so on. I didn't want to do that. I had done that. And that's why I started to do this kind of thing, or one of the reasons I started to do this. I love these things. I don't really feel they're mine in the way I would if I was knocking them out at a hundredth of a second with, you know, a camera that figures out everything and so on. It's just like something, I'm there and something passes through and hits a film, and occasionally, you know, it's kind of wonderful and pleases me. Any other questions? Mark?
Could you just talk about the one that's behind you?
In San Miguel, in June every year, they have a thing called the Day of the Locos, and it only happens in San Miguel, and people dress up in all kinds of costumes, and they just simply, you know, parade down the street. It's got a little more commercial in the last several years, where companies do it and have their employees do it and so on. And now, this is a good example. When I took this picture, this lady is about this far from me, where Elizabeth is. I've got my camera's shooting like that. And the camera is literally there. She's walking by. She stops just for a second. I'm probably shooting at a tenth of a second. You know, so it's like that. I didn't even see, well, you can barely see it here, but you can see it in the photograph. I didn't even see the guy who's behind her with a sombrero and walking. But then, you know, there he is when I developed the film and stuff. Now, consciously I didn't see that. You know, I don't know whether I saw it, you know, but that's fun.
Well, Bill, can I jump in and ask you a question? Because consciously, you must be doing something in terms of deciding on the subjects that you're taking. I mean, my favorite picture, and it's two pictures in the book. It's called The House of the Workers. Is that the title?
Yeah, The House of the Workers.
And it's the most bland building in existence. It's just two photographs of this, basically a kind of barracks for migrant workers. And I don't think anybody would have taken a picture of that for any particular reason. But I'm just fascinated by, you were drawn to that object, that absolutely plain, grubby object for some reason. What was there something that impelled you to take a picture of this building, or was it just?
No, actually, that is a building that's in the middle of a cotton field. And when Sally and I have gone to South Pottery for years, we drove by it. And before I started pinhole stuff, Sally said, you better get a picture of that because it's going to disappear one of these days. Because we'd always remark on it, you know. And then I started doing the Tragaluz stuff. Incidentally, I call my cameras Tragaluzes. Tragaluzes cameras are Tragaluz. Where that comes from is in Mexico, there are a lot of homes with vaulted brick ceilings. And right down the middle of them, they'll have clear glass bricks, you know, to let light in. And those are called Tragaluz or Tragaluzes, which means light swallowers. I didn't want to call my cameras pinhole cameras because Steve Clark would call me Senor Pinhole. and I didn't want to be known as Senor Pinhole. So I got uppity and called them Tragaluz. But, you know, basically I was obeying my wife.
But there was something about this building
Yeah.
that drew you to it. What was it?
I think there were a lot of ghosts, I think. And I don't know. But that was the idea of doing this stuff, is not to think about it. Just if you were moved to follow that and take a picture of that, well, then you had the instrument for it, you know. Mm-hmm. And that's, so it was really that. It was just, you know, kind of follow your bliss. Something looked interesting, you know. You know, and there's some of these things that I shot, you know, over a period of 3 or 4 years, you know, where I'd shoot it and then, well, it didn't really say anything, but I was attracted to what it was. The door knocker is an example. The hand that's holding the pepper, which is a door knocker in San Miguel. It's a colonial door knocker. And I was really struck by that. I don't know why. And I photographed it and photographed it and photographed it. The guy with the pigeons, I photographed him, you know, different times over a 3-year period, you know. And it's that the birds were moving so fast always in my, you know, I was shooting at a half a second or a second, and I just got nothing but fuzz. But little by little, you know, I got a good picture. And then he disappeared. And every morning for years and years, he had been on the plaza feeding the pigeons at 11:30. And I took a picture, went home, made a print. Months later, I came back, gave him a print, never saw him again. And he just simply vanished. There's a picture of a fella sitting on the curb. He's wearing a sombrero. He was an ice cream salesman. Wonderful, sweet man. I photographed him. God, this is starting to sound like it's a bad thing to be doing. But shortly thereafter, he was struck by lightning and killed. Yeah. And I apologize.
This question's for Elizabeth.
Yes.
What do you like most about teaching photography?
I like the fact that it's mostly younger people, and that they might have very different points of view about the work. And you know, my art history training was very traditional and very Eurocentric, and it was only very gradually that I sort of learned about art internationally, and have always tried to read new theories. But students kind of will kind of hone in on the things. They often, especially art students, aren't really interested in that much theory. They're interested in how something is made and why you made it. And that's sort of really one of the things that I think Bill and I talked a lot about. I mean, you know, why did you go out and make these photographs, and what do they mean to you? And then I tried to come and put some other overlays, you know, some of the ideas about what they mean to me. But in the end, I think that's really the most important thing. I mean, how do you, standing in front of that image, react? Is it meaningful